and the Independent National Electoral Commission has approved the registration of 2 new political parties, bringing the total number of registered parties in Nigeria to 21 ahead of 2027. Now, the newly registered parties are the Democratic Leadership Alliance, or the DLA, and the Nigeria Democratic Congress, the NDC. INEC Chairman Professor Joash Amupitan made the announcement during a consultative meeting with political parties in Abuja. Now, the DLA was registered after a rigorous assessment process, while the NDC was registered in compliance with a federal high court order from Lokoja in Kogi State. Now, Amupitan revealed that INEC initially received 171 letters of intent from different associations, all seeking registration, but only the DLA fully met all of the legal requirements. The NDC's registration followed a judicial directive. Now, the INEC chairman cautioned political parties against internal crises and litigations, calling on them to embrace internal democracy and transparency as election preparations intensify. Now, for a conversation about INEC's registration of 2 new parties and the impact that all of this can make on an election that's basically less than a year away, we have human rights lawyer and former president of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, Malaki Ugwummadu, who joins both of us now. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.
My pleasure to be here again. Good afternoon.
Yes, good to have you. So, this is coming on the heels of this mass defection that we've also seen to APC. The political landscape is really heating up. So give us a sense of why we're seeing this now, and can they really break through these 2 new parties?
I think what should be gratifying is the fact that the principles that underscores a democratic environment has once more been rekindled. Perhaps not as much as all the political associations would have wanted, because at the heart of this desire for registration is the need for an expansion of this political space. It used to be very constricted when in the past you had all manner of regulations and guidelines and conditions, some insisting that for you to qualify as a political party and not a political association, you must have registered offices in all states of the Federation. Others will insist that the names and the residential address and the contact addresses of the executive officers of such political parties in each of the states of the Federation must be made available. So, around 2001, because we've traveled this route before, Chief Gani Fahimi of blessed memory had to take on a case on behalf of Barabi Musa and INEC, in which the same standards of the same conditions were given and characterized as guidelines. Those guidelines stipulated what I have just referenced, and he said no. My right to freely associate as a Nigerian cannot be foreclosed by these conditions you are giving. In any case, the Constitution, which is the supreme law, has made elaborate provisions that enables me to associate politically and participate in the political activities of the country. And therefore, you cannot foreclose those rights by these guidelines and conditions. And by the way, if my desire is to, as one from the Niger Delta, is to concern myself with environmental pollution and mobilize the energy of my people around the issues of ecological disaster, environmental pollutions, climate change, and all that, why would I need an office in Abuja? Or why must I have executive officers in Lagos? And so, even in America and Britain, we all clamor to behave like. It's not restricted to just the Republicans, and there are many other political parties. They may not be as vibrant, but they have their own concerns, and they continue to push until they get to the point where their campaign begin to gain traction and enough to metamorphose into. So that case went up to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court struck down those regulations. That was how the space was opened. So 2001 to 2003, that's a huge length of time. And that we're back to it now tells you something about how we're not learning so much. And you could see that out of 171, only one made it. The other was on account of a court order. So a lot of work needs to be done, which is not yet uhuru. The dust in the belfry hasn't quite settled, and we're still far in the woods to begin to pat ourselves in the back that it's all over. I am not making my remarks completely oblivious of the fact that we must also find a way of regulating, because a husband and wife can decide to, yeah? But the point is that as many that desire to pursue an aspect of their life, and they're able to gather people, sympathizers, who subscribe to the programs and activities of such political parties, they must be given a space to participate in. That is what the freedom of association is all about. And that constitution, that is a ground norm of the country, far ahead of every other legislation or regulation, stipulates that such people, once they desire to be political parties, should be registered. It's a different thing if they could not make any meaningful progress or considerable progress about it. But that right to become a political party, and by Section 222, you cannot participate except you are registered. That threshold will be allowed to be crossed.
Okay, well said. I appreciate the background you've given us from this 2001 to what we're seeing now. But some are not too thrilled with this registration of these new parties. Their argument, even though you might say that you can attribute this to opposition figures and the likes, they're saying that such parties dilute votes and profits the ruling party, that they dilute the votes that could have gone to the opposition in the already established parties. So do you think that these new parties are genuine political movements, or are they designed to fragment opposition ahead of the election? So
that's another perspective to it, and I'm taking it from you, although I'm not very good in hazarding. I deal with facts. However, election in itself is contestation, very healthy one. And what they do is to do the much you can to deplete the fortunes of your opponent. So they say vigilance is the eternal price we pay for our liberty. So if you're already suspecting that this could be part of it, then you're already forewarned. And to be forewarned is to be forearmed. In which case, it therefore behoves on the I don't like calling them opposition party as such, because in a society completely flawed like ours, that which you think will never happen can become a reality. I am aware that we're not just going to deal with issues of macroeconomic policies. We're not just going to do with highfalutin questions about climate change. And what has been described in Nigeria as stomach infrastructure, we play by far more significant and dominant role moving forward. So you might think that you are offering them the shorter end of the stick. But when the push comes to shove, when the reality occurs, water will seek its level. I make the point, therefore, that it might be within the calculation, political calculus of those who are, pushing some of these narratives, to look at that one side story of it. But in reality, don't forget, it's not only members of political parties that vote. There are so many of us who are not card-carrying members of any political party that reserve our right to vote. In fact, some do what you call protest votes. Even if it is to make sure that this person doesn't win, I will vote. And so there are 1,001 variables which are not in the control of any person. But in direct response to your question, it might be a very credible proposal or suspicion. However, as they are planning, so are the Nigerian people who are the direct recipients of the socio-economic policies of government will also be making, and they won't be there when they've crossed their minds, when they have resolved that, wait a minute, I now have an opportunity to at least express how I feel about your government and governance under your leadership. And it is a secret ballot. I know that we are still having issues around the question of electronic transmission and all that. But as a member, in short, as a leader of the civil society, I will tell all of you to keep your powders very dry. Between today, tomorrow, and next, you will hear how Nigerians are going to react organically to that question. I'm sure that we will move backwards.
Any snippets,
A country that does business online, largely so. A political party that has embraced e-registration. People who are gravitating towards cashless society, and so on and so forth. Cannot tell that cock and bull story about. In any case, how does that become a desire for which the Nigerian people are insisting, legitimately too, that aspect of the whole democratization effort must now be expressly stated, documented in the Electoral Act. The reason being that when that issue came up for determination in court, the courts were in two minds. In fact, the court said regulations and directives of INEC do not constitute part of the Electoral Act. And therefore, electronic transmission was not part of what should determine the outcome. Now, you had the National Assembly election, in which members of this in which members of the Senate and House of Representatives had their results transmitted electronically onto INEC IREF instantaneously, real time, that's the catchword now, and immediately. When it came to that of the presidential election, we heard about technical glitch. If I ask you what is the meaning of technical glitch in your native language, you won't be able to say it.
Am I wrong?
Lies are better told in English. So we want to remove that and clearly state it, document it, and put it in the statute so that we know where we are headed and we know how to navigate it when the time comes.
And then very quickly, because I think we're running out of time, how do you see the INEC chairman positioned in the midst of all of this? I mean, these conversations, the backlash, the protests, these two new parties, if you can just tie, because this is his first election as chairman going into 2027, so where does he fit into all of this?
He came with very huge hype in his favor. Now, a professor of law with expertise in evidence, those of us who practice know that that is the core of the whole thing. He came highly recommended. But you know, in our climate, you need much more than that. He is an umpire, an arbiter, a referee. And therefore, you cannot expect him to descend to the arena of the contest. That neutrality, that vests confidence in him, is what I expect that he should maintain. However, he is not from Ghana. Neither is he from Côte d'Ivoire. He is a Nigerian that has a historical duty to keep fit with his duty and responsibility as the INEC boss. History beckons at him now to deliver to Nigerians the kind of electoral process that will guarantee confidence. Legitimacy does not come by people's wish as such. Legitimacy inures through participation, popular participation of the people. So what he does could be legal, but it may be illegitimate. To attain that legitimacy is to be able to listen carefully to the voice of the people who have borne the brunt of a flawed system, and respond accordingly. And he has unfettered powers to go about that without pandering to sentiments or emotions. And for those who are in the context, it is a game. That game should not be played at the detriment of the future of this country. That game must be played in a way that promotes the virtues and enable Nigerians and Nigeria attain the potentials that we bear as a nation. We must be able to conduct ourselves in a manner that we are no longer taking for granted. There are many things happening to this country in recent times, including the arbitrary invasion of Nigeria, in a way that tells me that we are not just a third world country. We have been consigned to political purgatory, if you're a Catholic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Human rights lawyer and former president of the Committee for Defense of Human Rights, Ugwummadu. We appreciate your insight on both the INEC registration of the two parties and the transmission of results. Thank you so much for joining us on this day.
Thank you. Pleasure. I appreciate it.